Welcome to Kardec Radio, where you nourish your soul daily. As you wait for our next program, The Medium's Book, visit Kardec Publisher at kardecpublisher.com to check out our latest books. Also, check out our Kardec Flicks, Spiritism in a Click. Just go to kardecflix.com. And now with you, our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni, with the program The Medium's Book. Enjoy it.
Hello, welcome to the Medium's Book program. I'm very thankful for the invitation to be here again, this time talking about chapter 17 of part 2 of the Medium's Book, which is called The Development of a Medium. So I welcome you all and invite you all to join us through this experience. It's a very interesting chapter because it deals with the development of mediumship. And as we are going to see, we'll be talking about a very specific type of mediumship, but everything that applies, or most of what applies to this kind of mediumship, can be taken and applied to the different varieties of mediumistic faculty. So, let's start. First slide. So this chapter is divided into 3 parts. The first part is the development of mediumship. So Kardec organizes the ideas and talks about automatic writing. So not only writing, the faculty of writing, mediumistic writing, but also a more specific one within the writing, which is the automatic writing. But as I mentioned before, everything that we see here can be taken and applied, adjusted, I would say, and to be used with the different type of mediumship. Changes in handwriting, which is particular also to this type of mediumship, but whatever the type of mediumship, we may have change. For instance, when we have the faculty of speaking, the voice may change. When we have different types of mediumistic faculty, the characteristics of the manifestation may change. But in this particular case, he takes handwriting because, as we are going to see, was the writing faculty was the one that was very common in those days. And also we are going to talk about the loss and suspension of mediumship. We'll see some reasons for both loss and suspension of the faculty. So, right. So we are here addressing writing mediumship. If you remember, when we study a bit of the history of the faculty going back to the 19th century, we are going to see that it started using instruments to help in writing. So we can see here in the picture, this is what is called the planchette, and it was used with this configuration. We would have a pen or a pencil at one end, and then just touching the other end of it, one or two or perhaps even more people, just touching it slightly, it would move and then write on a paper. Also, you could make some arrangement with a basket for the same purpose. But then later it was realized that we wouldn't need the planchette or the basket or any other intermediary there. We could just get the hand and put it straight to hold the pen or the pencil and then start writing straight away. And Kardec says that it was the widespread kind of mediumship in those days. And also he's going to talk about the writing mediumship in this particular chapter because it was the simplest and the most convenient, and the one that provides the most satisfactory and complete results. The reason for that is we see that the writing procedure is very simple. When we speak, basically draw the attention of those around us to what we are saying. But we don't have the same problem when we are writing. We can write quietly on a corner. So it gives us less reason for embarrassment, especially at the beginning. We are going to see this is very important when we talk about novices, when we talk about the beginners. And he also says that this one was the most sought after. So people were interested in developing writing mediumship before anything else. We know that nowadays we have a variety of mediumship. We also know that speaking is very common, and also we have healing mediums and a great variety of mediums. We can also find a list of the most common ones in the mediums book. Sorry, but in this case we are going to talk especially about writing mediums, as I said, but specifically about automatic writing, extending that to other types of writing, which are semi-automatic and intuitive writing, as well, as we are going to see at some point here, and also taking that to different manifestations in terms of the faculty. So Kardec says that in those days there were clear means of diagnosing if someone was a medium or not, although he says at some point in the medium's book that everyone is a medium. And what he means by that is that we have the germ of the faculty. We have the tools to develop the faculty, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the faculty is well developed, well established is there. And once we have, because mediumship is organic, it's like, a radio without its aerial. So it is a radio, but it can function, it can pick up the signals around because it's missing the area, or the area is not functional, for instance. Okay, we've cut the wire or something like that. But the area is there in potential, that is radio and could work normally. But some people, they have the natural organic condition to establish this faculty in a very clear way. So he says that the physical signs are not a certain indication of the faculty, and it can be seen, it can be found in children, old people, men and women, whatever their temperament, their health status, their degree of intellectual and moral development may be. So you can just, by looking at someone or just listening, for a couple of minutes, what they have to say, and clearly identify them as medium or not, or the degree of mediumship that they have developed. But once we have signs of mediumship, we can, of course, improve, make the most of it. So what is called the development of mediumship is not taking someone who has no trace whatsoever of mediumship, who doesn't show any sign of mediumship, to become, a medium with a wide open channel. No, is that you show some traces, some signs of mediumship, you can optimize the use of that faculty. You can exercise the use of the faculty so you can make the most of it. So he says that there's only one way to ascertain its existence, and this only way is through experimentation. So I suspect I have mediumship, so ideally I should start practicing. We are going to see under what conditions, in which way, so that we will see if in fact I have the faculty or not. So Kardec says also in those days it was very common that people would experiment, aiming at writing, written communication or writing mediumship. So the development of mediumship. So Kardec gives us, a summary, basically, because of course he could have gone into detail in each one of these aspects. He does that in the other chapters. He mentions certain things here in this chapter, but also he refers to other chapters. Otherwise, this would be a long chapter if we were to talk in details about each type of mediumship. So he gives us an idea. He takes written mediumship because he was, we already mentioned here the reasons for, taking the example of writing mediums to explain the process. So he says that this process of development is quite simple, and it consists merely of taking a pencil and a paper, of course, in the case of writing mediums, and putting yourself in the writing position. Just grab your pen, your pencil, get some piece of paper, put yourself in a writing position, and then it would take place. But then he says, nonetheless, several recommendations are indispensable for obtaining a good result. If I knew what was a writing medium, I would just grab a pen, a pencil, piece of paper, start writing straight away. But I'm in the process of identifying, because he mentioned experimentation is the only way to identify if there is a certain type of mediumship there and to what degree it is there. It can be developed, it can be used. So he makes some recommendations because we know mediumship, the medium is a channel. So we have to be, as mediums, a very good channel, the best channel it can be. But what is going to pass through this channel is like a pipe. We need to be a strong pipe. We need to be a wide pipe. We need to, be a clean pipe. But what is going through this pipe is not up to us. That's why it has some recommendations, it requires some development, because we need to be as good a pipe, as good a channel as we can. So, conditions. First, avoid anything that might impede the free movement of the hand. This is a physical condition. If you take a pencil that, the ink is a bit dry and is not writing properly, it gets stuck every now and then. So you have some impediment there to write correctly. If you have a pencil, which has the tip that is broken, or the lead inside is broken in pieces, so every time you sharpen it and try to use, it breaks again and again. So the conditions need to be very good. Your arms need to be free, resting at the right place and in the right point under the right conditions, so that you can write freely. It does not matter whether a pen or a pencil is used. But we should remember that in those days, they didn't have ball pen. They had the type of pen that needed, to be dipped into ink, and a fountain pen. A fountain pen came later. They used to have a feather in those days, and they had to be dipped into the ink and carry on writing. So that was a regular condition, to dip into the ink and then carry on writing. So for a medium, that would be a kind of impediment. It would create a certain type of difficulty, because it would be necessary to stop every now and then to do that. So a pencil would be preferable in that case. But if we think of a very productive medium, he writes, or she writes very quickly, a lot of pages, one after the other. So they need assistance. They need someone to give them a blank sheet of paper every time they need, to sharpen several pencils and give them and exchange them. And so, it's not a one-man work, as it were. It's necessary to have these assistants to make the work easier. Not that would prevent totally the work from being done. We know nowadays we have computers, and writing medium could very well sit on a computer and start typing. But the condition here is using a pen or a pencil. Another condition on a different level now is there must be between the spirit and the medium certain fluidic combinations, which are not always immediately established. We know that the communication within mediumship, whatever the type of mediumship, is perispirit, spiritual body to spiritual body. And this exchange is called in fluidic terms. You need to learn how to tune in both, to provide them with what is called in physics resonance, so that they vibrate 100% at the same frequency. To get there is not straightforward. So we need some practice. For some, it may be, but it's not a general case. So it is necessary to establish this and work on that. It will improve, certainly. Refrain, especially beginners, from evoking a particular spirit to the exclusion of any other, since fluidic relations only often cannot be very well established between the two, no matter how much affinity there may be. Oh, I have an affinity with that deceased person. I'll evoke that person to practice with me here, and I have this affinity, but I don't have the fluidic link. This fluidic link, this tuning is something different. That's why Kardec recommends do not evoke a spirit to start working with you in the development of, in this case, writing mediumship or any type of mediumship. In those days, it was very common to evoke spirits, especially in the Parisian Spiritist Society, where they were learning from spirits about their condition. So they knew the situation of the person while incarnated, and then they evoked the person after returning to spirit. They evoked that person to know how the process of discarnation happened and how they found themselves in the spirit world. So it was necessary to call specific spirits. But nowadays, and the best way, especially for beginners, is to just be available, regardless of who will come to use the faculty. There are no sacramental formulas. This is also important. Formulas mean nothing to spirits. Oh, I'll say A and B, I'll do these, I'll dance that, and no. We know that certain material rituals or objects or whatever, they evoke something in us, like a music, or a music that is part of a period of our life. Every time we listen to the music, something comes back, or it puts us in a different state of mind, or even smell. We may smell something that reminds us of our childhood, and immediately we are transported to that. So we know that certain elements help us focus on or remember certain situations or certain conditions, but they are not necessary. They are not fundamental, because, as they say, they may mean something for us, but not for the spirit. So no sacramental formulas. The evocation, when it happens, must always be made in God's name. There are several reasons for that. Due to our limited time, we won't go into detail in each one of them. But what we're going to say is, when we evoke God, we create a protection. We attract good spirits, to not only to communicate, but also to supervise the communication. We may receive a suffering spirit, we may work with that suffering spirit, but we have the guarantee that the ones organizing on the spiritual side are good spirits, so we are protected. Or when we want to call certain spirits, and not just evoke in the name of God the good spirits, it's essential that first, Kardec says, we address those who we know to be good and attuned to us. And he recommends the spirit guides responsible for that group of medium or mediumship work. In the case of the Parisian Society, they evoked St. Louis. So when we read, for instance, the book Heaven and Hell, we are going to see that after the most complicated cases, St. Louis always comes to give instructions. So he was the one supervising the work. So in the name of the Almighty, we call that spirit, or we pray that the spirit of so and so will communicate with us. So we make sure that we are under good assistance. And he says that a more important guideline to observe than the manner of making the appeal is calmness, meditation, and meditation aided by solitude, silence, and the avoidance of anything that could cause a distraction. This is very important. This is something we can practice in our home every day. And when we go to the Spiritist Center, for instance, to do the development or to use our mediumistic faculty, to put it at service of good spirits, we are already familiar and I would say, familiarized with the procedure of keeping ourselves in silence, in interior silence, and avoiding anything that may cause distraction, including our thoughts, problems that we bring from the outside world, from our earthly life, and that we take sometimes into the mediumship work. And every now and again say, my God, I have that bill to pay. I don't know how, but wow, it's huge. And where am I going to get money from? And, all sorts of things. So it is important to learn how to control this state through meditation. And also combined with an ardent desire and the firm will to succeed. And Kardec explains what he means by firm will: serious and persevering determination, sustained with firmness and without impatience or anxiousness. This is a problem, especially for novices, for beginners. Always anxious. Oh, today, am I going to get a communication? Am I going to show some sign of progress in my mediumistic development? Or so? No. We have to be serious. We have to persevere. We have to have discipline. Discipline is fundamental. Firm, knowing what we want and doing exactly what is necessary to get there with patience. So we can renew the attempt every day for 10 or 15 minutes. I would say the practice of meditation especially, because what we recommend is we're going to see the environment in a group is much better, more favorable for the work than on our own. So to practice for 10 or 15 minutes during a certain period of time. This is not cast in stone. These are just guidelines. And they are important for us just to, have an idea and follow, but not to do exactly, not a single dot out of what Kardec said, because, of course, there are some particularities that are from Kardec's time, and today, we evolved to something else. These guidelines are still very much up to date, but we need to apply them in a different condition today. So an approach that almost always yields good results is the use of good, flexible, and ready developed medium as a temporary aid. Kardec says, yes, we can use a medium to help magnetizing the arm or holding the arm, since the arm in automatic writing is basically, I would say, no different than a planchette, where you put your hand, just touch it lightly, and then it starts to move. The hands of a medium in automatic writing, it's just an object made of flesh and bone, but it is an object. So what Kardec is saying is an experienced medium could hold the hands of that medium as if it was an object for automatic writing, or also magnetize the arm of that medium. We know in the development of mediumship is very common, and even in the practice of mediumship, depending on the circumstances, that the healing mediums, we give healing to help in the process, not only to help this communicating spirit, but also to help the process of, tuning. So this magnetization of the arm is also helpful. And Kardec says also something that helps is the gathering of a certain individuals together who are all animated with the same desire and intent. Let's say to form a group of developing mediums, of novices, and working with them in group. When I started, I was about 18 when I started in mediumship. We used to have 1 hour study and 20 to half an hour afterwards of practice. And it was like that. All of us, we are beginners, and we had the assistance of 2 or 3 experienced mediums. They would, help with healing in the arm for those who were showing signs of, writing, in the area of the throat for those who shown sign of speaking. And so it was like that. And then Kardec says that individuals gathered together for the same purpose, for a collective whole, from a collective whole, whose power and sensitivity increases through a kind of magnetic influence which aids the faculty's development. That's why we are devised. Right environment, right place, right environment, set time, but in a group, because we benefit from the collective, from the group, the collective work, and not for being on our own, especially in the beginning. So steps in the development of the ability in developing the ability to write. The first indication of the ability to write is a sort of quivering in the arm or hand. In the throat, maybe an itching of the throat, and well, it varies from the type of mediumship to type of mediumship. Little by little, the hand is seized by an impulse that the medium cannot control. Remember, automatic and semi-automatic writing. Almost always in the beginning, only meaningless symbols are traced. Symbols, strokes, letters, things without any meaning. But later, the characters become more precise, and finally the writing progresses to end up acquiring the necessary speed. So this is the natural course of evolution, writing mediums. But one may make a daily attempt, but should stop at the first equivocal signs in order not to provide an opportunity for mocking spirits. So, and we see why is that? Why mocking the spirits? If we realize, we have also to be, a bit aware of that. If we show no traces of that particular aspect of the mediumistic faculty, we should not just insist and go beyond a certain point, because we may be open a channel to mocking spirits, because good spirits won't use a channel that is not ready to be used. And we insist, and this process will attract mocking spirits. And one spirit added, there are mediums whose faculty cannot go beyond such symbols. Stay there, strokes and letters and symbols and full stops and signs. And when after a few months they obtain nothing more than insignificant responses after a few months, such as yes or no or isolated letters, it would be useless to persist and a waste of paper. And these are mediums, but unproductive ones. An unproductive writing medium. So we should be aware of that. If we are developing, and Kardec said, we only know our mediumship through experimentation, we need to test it for a while. No, I have no traces of being, no signs of being a writing medium. So perhaps a speaking one, perhaps a healing medium. So we have to, go and check it during a certain period of time, but of course be flexible. And that's why it's important to be under the supervision of well-experienced, well-intentioned mediums. So the first communications should only be considered as mere exercises that are entrusted to secondary spirits. A reason for not attributing anything more to them beyond a mediocre value. So the initial, in the beginning, the messages, they will come from spirits who are training us, like someone who has been paid to tune our piano. And they are just tuning, they are just checking that everything is fine. But the good pianists will come later when the piano is fine-tuned. And that's the same here. That's why it's important not to insist in carry on with the one who is tuning the piano, because we will never get to the point that we will attract the best pianists to play, if you know what I mean. So the main difficulty encountered by most novice mediums involves having to deal with less evolved spirits. Initially, as I said before, they are there for training. But once they are trained, afterwards, they have to move on, or, as has been said before, give up that type of mediumship. And that's That's important to know that, to learn that. And we learn that through experience. Kardec says the first precaution for the men is to arm themselves with sincere faith under the protection of God. And then we go back to what Kardec says, calling for the God and good spirits to second us, to assist us, and the guardian angel. And the second precaution is for them to dedicate themselves with scrupulous care to recognizing through all the indications that experience offers the nature of the first communicating spirits, whom it is always prudent to distrust. So the first ones are not the best ones. That is why study of the doctrine beforehand is indispensable in the medium intents to avoid the trouble that is inseparable from a lack of experience. So a lack of experience may get us into trouble. That's why it's wise for us to study and to be with a group. So the writing or psychographic mediums, as some call, so a purely mechanical function is very rare, Kardec puts. And quite frequently, intuition is coupled with it to some degree. I've made this picture here showing that mechanical mediums has hardly any, if any, intuition. It's mechanical. The arm is just an object. And as we move down here, an intuition starts to take a more important role. We go to semi-mechanical mediums. They write without the control of the arm, but they know what they are writing. And intuitive or inspired medium, where basically everything goes through their mind first, and then they have to make the effort to write. They have to control their arms in a natural way. The brain says, yes, write that word, and then we write that word. But then that's when the difficulty comes, especially in the beginning, because intuition, is this mine? Is this my thought? Where is this coming from? Is this from spirit? If I'm, mystifying it, and some people are afraid of mystification. Mystification is when you pretend to have a communication from spirit and you don't have, but you have not so good intention in doing that. Animism, which is normal, the ideas may come from the subconscious of the person, of the medium, but it is a spirit manifesting itself. It's valid. It's no mystification because there's no intent in doing so. But something may come from, and sometimes that is evoked by a spirit. He has this experience. I want to talk about this experience. Let me bring back his experience and build on that. And that's why sometimes a few days before, it's interesting because I read something about these a few days before, and now that is coming back into my mind. But I read that. Why is it coming? It's me. It's not the spirit. No, perhaps the spirit is bringing that back. And that's why, at the beginning is very difficult for some mediums. So when mediums are aware of what they are writing, they are naturally led to doubt their ability, not knowing if the writing is their own or if they're of spirit. So the recommendation is they should not be overly concerned about it. And they should proceed in spite of their doubts. They are there to be a channel. It doesn't matter. They analyze later. They will have time to go through the messages, written messages. Easy. You can read it as many times as you want, and you can then evaluate with time. We will determine this fine line that is drawn between what is ours, what comes from the spirit, and sometimes what the spirits evoke in us in order to build their thoughts. Some advice. Once the faculty has been developed, it is essential that mediums not abuse it. It is a sacred faculty. It's not for amusement, for curiosity. It's not for financial gain in the spiritist perspective. So the faculty has been given to them for good use and not to satisfy vain curiosity. And it is advisable to set certain days and hours aside for practicing mediumship. so that one may be more concentrated. And so the spirits will come, the good spirits. The good spirits, they like discipline. They like punctuality. They like things that are organized. We can't invite a serious person or a serious group of people to come to our meeting, whatever it is, if we don't start at the same time. We change the day without notice. We, not organized at all. They will just draw, they just go away. And then the ones we use that moment, the ones who want to have fun, who want to create embarrassing situation for the mediums, these are the ones who are going to use the faculty in the way that it's being proposed by the lack of organizing. Change in writing, we've mentioned that before. In handwriting, some mediums, they change their handwriting according to the spirit who is writing. That spirit always writes in this way, so I can tell it's that spirit because of the handwriting. But it's not necessary. A medium may be an automatic, medium of automatic writing, but always have the same handwriting. And what they say is there is a special name for the medium who changes the handwriting according to the spirit. It's a polygraphic medium. So I recommend read the other chapters of the medium's book where they talk about these varieties. And finally, the loss and suspension of mediumship. The mediumistic faculty is subject to interruptions and temporary suspensions, and this happens for so many different reasons. Sometimes it's the physical condition of the medium. Sometimes it's a kind of a lesson for the group. They are not doing things correctly. It's a way to call their attention. Sometimes it's something that the medium is going through or the group is going through. So it's better just to stop the mediumistic activity because the channels have been compromised, and let's wait until the channels are okay to work again. And also, no matter the ability of the medium, they say, it's not 100% under the control of the medium. What the medium can do is work hard to present him or herself as a good instrument. But if we are an instrument, the ones who are going to use the instruments, we have no control over them. So the spirits are the ones who control, this loss or suspension of mediumship. If it may come back when what is creating this situation, is over, but there's no certainty of anything since, as I said before, it's not under the medium's control. And I just want to end with this. I find very interesting for those, very much interested in mediumship. God does not bestow this gift upon mediums for their own pleasure, even less for them to serve their ambitions, whatever these ambitions may be. Rather, it is to serve their own progress, being a good channel, working hard to have standards, moral standards to be a good channel, and to make the truth known to humankind, to get the messages, to get the reality of the spirit world to humans. That's what I had prepared for us today for this chapter 17. And I invite you all to read the book, not just chapter 17, but then next week we'll have chapter 18 as a continuation of this beautiful initiative by the Kardec Radio. So thank you very much indeed. I hope you've enjoyed it.